Good afternoon, specially invited guests and members of the audience. Our topic for this keynote is building a resilient healthcare system that works for all. Before we proceed, please let's observe some minutes of silence for Panford Teaching Hospital emergency doctor, by name Dr. Kwame Edu Oforin, a 47-year-old emergency doctor who passed away recently from a heart attack. His case is very pertinent to this presentation, which is a resilient healthcare system that benefits all of us. It also depicts the tragic situation that confront us as Ghanaians with respect to our medical system: access, affordability, availability. With due respect, we might say that his obituary should not, as usual, be what a shock, but it should be what a loss. Because at only 47, and having spent 10, 15 years or more as a medical practitioner, all his skills, of course, are going to waste. And of course, we have to remember the loss to his family. So we wish to extend our condolences to his family, colleagues, and loved ones. The passing away of Dr. Kwame Edu Oforin symbolizes the challenges we face with our medical system. In the Ghana World article and other articles and newspaper accounts that depict the cause of his tragic death and loss to Ghana and Ghana's medical system and to Panford Teaching Hospital, are borne out by the following facts. In the first place, he did not pass away tragically due to the absence of a lab. It wasn't a lab that could have saved him. It's just a procedure of passing a tube, maybe through his arm, maybe through his shoulder, getting to his heart and unblocking the blockage that prevented blood flow to his heart. It's a fairly simple medical procedure that does not require a laboratory. It is a procedure. So even in terms of reporting what happens in the medical sphere, we ought to pay attention to accuracy. His death also signifies the other challenges that we face in our medical system. We wish to first thank all and each individual who we know worked very hard to put together today's program, hosted by the Ghana College of Physicians and Surgeons. We thank especially the President, Professor Sam Debra, Senior Consultant, Surgeon and President of the Physicians and Surgeons of Ghana, and Dr. Perez Sepenu, Consultant OB-GYN, Chair of Public Lectures Committee of the College of Physicians and Surgeons, for inviting us to speak. We also thank members of you, the audience, for attending this presentation, which we are presenting in the form of the video. And we also wish to thank members of Family Panford, to my wife, Nana, 2 daughters, Araba and AC, for their support. Professor Debra, Dr. Perez, and I agreed to speak on our topic due to its significance. First, let's share some good news. Although at the heart of this presentation are the crises that have gripped the Ghanaian medical system, especially in the last 10, 30 years, we still like to share some good news. The healthcare system in Ghana was not always in crisis. I can personally attest to the decent healthcare and dental care that we received from the Koforidua Central Hospital. As a matter of fact, when I had my sojourn or emigrated to North America first via Canada and later on to US, mostly in the Boston area, I remember very well that for a long time, I never went to a dentist. After 10, 20 years being abroad, for the first time, I visited a dentist, and all they recommended was routine cleaning. As we speak right now, anytime I go to my dentist, a very good dear friend of our family, he's very enthusiastic and he speaks glowingly about my having good teeth. He considers me one of his best patients in terms of my strong health, my strong teeth, according to this dentist. However, in contrast to what we are observing today, we seem to be gripped by a never-ending crisis, and our healthcare system has not been immune from this crisis at all. We seem to be reacting to crisis, lurching from one crisis to another without long-term creative national solutions to the crises that are in front of us. From our standpoint and based on our interactions with both Ghanaian medical and non-Ghanaian medical systems, we observe the following. We in Ghana are in dire need of highly trained, skilled doctors, nurses, lab technologists, midwives, and we add crucially creative medical administrators, leaders who we would distinguish between real leaders, bureaucrats, and mere administrators. There's a huge difference between being a medical leader and being a medical bureaucrat or administrator. A leader is creative, resourceful, anticipates problems of the medical system, and finds creative solutions that work. Second, we observe that we in Ghana are way behind in terms of medical technology that make advances in medical practices like the use of laparoscopic or robotics in surgery and other modern day medical practices. I like to cite some personal experiences or encounters I have had in North America and contrast them with the situations in our dear country. At one time on my numerous trips to Ghana, I had a shoulder problem and I approached my medical doctor colleagues to give me a shoulder injection. My colleague nicely said to me, "Kwamina, it's a very complicated process and we can't do it in this facility." I contrast that sharply with processes that I used to go through in the Boston area. I've had severe neck, shoulder, and back problems and often had to go for injections in the neck, in my spine area, and in my shoulder. Initially, we didn't have x-rays, we didn't use dyes to trace the needle and where it was approaching. And I recall on numerous occasions in the early phases of my treatment, the needle used by the doctors hitting the bone in my spine and in my neck. Years later, with the use of x-rays and dyes, the needle used by the doctors to inject medicines into my neck and shoulder were guided to avoid the bones in my neck and shoulder without causing me severe pain. I also recall in February 2016 ripping my Achilles heel tendon from soccer. Yes, I like to play soccer a lot. And on a Sunday, February 2016, I ended up ripping my Achilles heel tendon. What happens pained me, not because of the medical pains I went through from my ripped Achilles heel tendon, but upon reflection, in the first place, my colleague physicians, my doctor friends in the Boston area said to me, Kwamina, we don't need surgery to heal you. Within 5 to 6 months, we'll be back on the soccer field playing soccer with you again. What surprised me was that I didn't have to take any of the painkillers. Right from the person who did my POP to the physicians, orthopedists who took care of my ripped Achilles heel tendon, I learned how dedicated and how supportive the medical system was to the staff. I was also pained but gratified that some individuals in the medical system in the Boston area, or at least the medical facilities where I was treated, had devoted their time and passion to observe, monitor very carefully how the body heals itself. Whilst I was going through the treatment without surgery, and I'm glad to report that I can now play soccer, and I've since 2016 been playing soccer without any hitches, is that some individuals had taken the time and the trouble to specialize in how the body heals itself, and hence the need, the lack of surgery as the solution to my problems. Thirdly, we in Ghana lack physical medical infrastructure like appropriate hospitals, except say Kolebu, Komfanoti Teaching Hospital, University of Ghana Medical Center, and in Tibetan, in Cape Coast, and Sunyani Teaching Hospital. We solely lack physical infrastructure and other facilities that offer decent health care. Thirdly, we also lack the funds. And lack of funds come from two perspectives, and we wish to stress this important point. Most people focus on the nominal cedis that are allocated in the budget. They don't look at the impact of inflation, the growing population, the growing sophistication, and the need for advanced technology and medicines. And often people tell us we lack the funds, and most Ghanaians believe that because we're a poor country, we can't afford decent healthcare infrastructure. Folks, I have news for those of us who believe mistakenly that we are a poor country. I'd like to give a few examples. Ghana, by no stretch of the imagination, is a poor country, as the following depict. Cocoa gives us $2 billion. Gold, as at June 2025, we had exceeded $8 billion in earnings from gold. By the way, Ghana is the #1 gold producer in Africa and is in the top tier 5, 6, 7 countries that produce gold in the world. Oil also gives us $2 billion, and remittances from Ghanaians overseas into the Ghanaian economy are between $4 to $5 billion. If you add up all these monies, we exceed 10, 11, 12 billion dollars. So the idea that we are a poor country and therefore can't afford, and therefore we justify our lack of appropriate healthcare infrastructure as very, very wrong. I also at this point like to raise a very interesting issue. Whereas our medical doctors, and I saw this happen, I wouldn't want to mention the exact facility, but this was in the eastern region of Ghana, where a medical doctor had to go to the back of his desktop computer and hold the cable that gives him access to the internet. Contrast that with the state of Massachusetts, where through investments in biotechnology or life sciences, and an investment of a mere $1 billion, there's enhanced access to the internet. And using this, my iPhone, I am in a position to regulate the thermostat or the temperature in my home using this iPhone. And it costs a mere $1 billion in terms of investment. And oh, by the way, those people who believe that the black man is not capable, the African is not capable, this $1 billion investment in biotechnology, life sciences, was initiated by a Massachusetts governor, a person of African or black descent. We like to stress that although we are not medical professionals, as social scientists, development and public policy experts, and having experienced both medical care as consumers or patients in and out of Ghana, we have a lot of professional and personal experiences and insights to share in this presentation. And the goal is to motivate us to reflect on and work toward better healthcare and outcomes for all of us Ghanaians. Fourth, we also face severe shortages of doctors and other support personnel, as the following depict. Most specialists are skewedly concentrated in urban areas, mostly Accra, Kumasi, and to a lesser extent in places like Tamale, Koforidua, and Sunyani. It's ironic and paradoxical that, sadly, while we lack local doctors and other medical personnel and specialists due to our own doing and to some extent factors beyond our immediate control, the UK, US, and other nations outside Africa poach the few personnel we have. Let's tell you what happened a decade ago when I visited our doctor in the Boston area. The doctor took us to his private office and printed a copy of a 2007 article by the New England Journal of Medicine, which compared the loss of both soccer players and medical doctors from Ghana. Also in the 1980s and 1990s, whenever we visited hospitals in New York, we felt like we were in Ghana. Ghanaian doctors and nurses were everywhere in New York, places like the Bronx and Harlem. Even right here in Boston, we often interact with Ghanaian doctor specialists leading key top-notch medical centers like Beth Israel and Brigham's hospitals and Tufts Medical University. Contrast with Ghana's current worsening situation. We have National Health Insurance Scheme versus Mahama Care. The question is, to what extent is it a duplication, and to what extent does Mahama Care undermine or supplement the National Health Insurance Scheme? We also observe overcrowding in our hospitals, especially OPDs and in emergency rooms. Our medical system, as we've already hinted, has inexpensive, low technology equipment, lack of affordable drugs, and most Ghanaians now relying on herbal treatment and self-care treatment. Very interestingly, as we observed in the Sunyani area within the last 12 months, one had to pay a whopping 600 Ghanaian cedis to be given a ride in a Ghanaian state-owned ambulance. And it's also important at this juncture to point out that Ghana has 275 constituencies, and at best each constituency out of the 275 has one ambulance. So what happens if the ambulance leaves town? What happens if an individual does not have a sponsor, a relative, a rich supporter, financier to pay the 600 cedis to get a ride in the ambulance? This also draws attention to another unfortunate death in Ghana. Several years ago, an MP got sick, I believe in the Nsawam area, and they had to bring an ambulance all the way from Parliament to evacuate him to, I believe, Kolebu. This time he survived. Second time, this same MP got sick and there was no ambulance, either because the driver was missing or they couldn't find the key to drive the ambulance from Parliament to the Nsawam area to evacuate him to a hospital. Dear members of the audience, contrast this with our own political elite being flown overseas for medical treatment. Here are the implications, and here are the legitimate questions to ask. How much does it cost to fly a Ghanaian official overseas by air ambulance or even by first class air travel? How much does it cost to pay privately? Of course, paid for by the state of Ghana, our own revenue, our own revenues, our own resources, in expensive British, America, and other Western-based medical facilities without insurance. It is not an exaggeration to assert that such expensive, high cost of expenditure flowing our elite outside of the country abroad for medical treatment, these same funds could be used to either bolster, refurbish, or possibly build brand new medical facilities that will be accessible to all of us. Please, I wish to reiterate this point. Let's walk through how much it costs being flown on an airplane, private or commercial, how much it costs to stay in a hotel or a hospitality facility, how much it costs for the treatment. And of course, these individuals never travel alone. They come with companions or other relatives who accompany them on such expensive trips. And also, very, very importantly, the question that arises is, and the moral dilemma is this: why, if I were part of the elite that can be flown overseas for medical treatment, if I can have access to overseas facilities with ease and at no cost to me, why should we be interested as elite in providing good, accessible, effective healthcare facilities for ordinary Ghanaians? Dear members of our audience, we want you to reflect on this important fact. Why fix, why repair, why turn Ghanaian health centers into centers of excellence if we can easily access good care overseas? Now to some observations from our involvement in Sunyani Teaching Hospital and the newly proposed UNAIR Medical School. And I wish to state this categorically and advisedly. The UNAIR Medical School is not in operation yet. It has not been certified by GTEC and it is not in operation. It is at the proposed stage. We wish to take this opportunity on our own behalf to acknowledge pledges by President Mahama and Vice President Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman to assist UNAIR's efforts to build a new medical school from scratch. We also wish to thank the Minister for Education, Idris Mahama, for pledging $200 million for UNAIR's infrastructure. At the same time, if we could be pardoned and permitted, we wish to comment on how seemingly visionless, leaderless medical and healthcare system have evolved over time. There's no overarching national plan. And let us reiterate this. Ghana's Petroleum Revenue Act 2011 requires the government of Ghana to provide a development plan to guide how oil revenues are expended on public services, including healthcare. Of course, that has not been done. Instead, the two political parties, both NDC and MPP, are equal opportunity offenders. Both of them avoid creating national plans in guiding public policies, including healthcare, by resorting to their political party manifestos, with very dire consequences, which we delve into much later. We also refer to a situation where there's no overarching national plan. In our parlance, we call it a big cycle or circle. Let me illustrate this point. The Minister for Health gets a call, or a doctor in Sunyani, Koforidua, Tamale, or Kumasi gets a call that somebody wants to donate some medical equipment or medicines. Our expectation is that this host person, local doctor, national person, would look into how the donation, the proposed whatever is being given to Ghana, fits within our overarching national plan in a systematic, holistic fashion. This also leads to an important question. What's the true meaning or value of our fine 1992 Constitution and post-1993 governance, despite their limitations? What happens, of what value, of what use is it to an old woman who can't see a doctor, can't buy medicines, which are either not available or too expensive, out of reach for her financially? No wonder we see on TV, we hear a lot of advertisements for herbal treatment, self-treatment. A Ghanaian is ill or sick from malaria, they self-diagnose. At best, they go to a pharmacy, have their fingers pricked, blood taken out, tested for malaria. Some don't even test for the kinds of different malaria parasites, and voila, they get prescriptions which they take. And oh, by the way, when we were growing up in Ghana, we were taught the distinction and the importance of preventive care versus curative care. Today, instead of making sure that we don't have waters standing in our backyards and in front of gutters, in front of our homes, and clearing the bushes from our surroundings, now what we resort to is we wait to be sick from mosquito bites, malaria, and we go to the pharmacy and we buy and we swallow medications to cure malaria instead of preventing malaria. For those of us who do not know this hidden fact, in a country like Singapore, they still have what are called medical inspectors. They go from home to home, making sure that water in containers do not contain mosquito larvae. If your home has any container with signs of mosquito larvae, you are fined on the spot. We used to have them in Ghana. We call them health inspectors, town council. Under the guise of IMF, World Bank, right-sizing our regimes, cutting back our public expenditure, including healthcare costs, we laid off all our healthcare inspectors or council workers. In light of this, we need a national stakeholders gathering to plan a completely new healthcare system, which the duopoly MPP NDC dominance may not permit us to do, but we have no choice doing. We have to convene a national dialogue, a true, bona fide, genuine national dialogue to review what is good and what needs to be changed about our medical system. We need to come up with a comprehensive plan, a plan based on data, information, based on a vision, and implemented diligently with room for flexibility to meet changing demands. So these are the requirements for successful medical care planning. It should be data-driven. It should be based on factual information. It should be carefully thought out, carefully implemented, and continuously adjusted in light of population changes, in light of medical technological changes, and in light of our national needs, including the realization that physical exercise and our diet constitute important components of healthy lifestyles. To prepare for this presentation, our graduate student and I toured the Agenda 11 Hospital at Sunyani near Fiapre and Odumase. We also toured UNE-owned medical facility being sponsored by Ghana Gas. We've also been on a number of occasions, spent time at Sunyani Teaching Hospital and Municipal Hospital, and observed that work at both Agenda 111 Hospital and UNE's own new hospital have all come to a stop. They've been abandoned. They could as well be full of scorpions, snakes, and outgrown with grass and bushes. We are appending to this presentation some videos that graphically depict the state. They vividly depict the state of these two important medical facilities in the Sunyani municipality. At the end of our tour with our graduate student, we identify the following questions that jump right out in our faces. This include, how do, say, the Agenda 111 hospital and the UNAIR hospital fit into a cohesive, comprehensive part of a national healthcare plan or agenda? How do these medical facilities, together with the municipal hospital, together with the newly upgraded teaching hospital in Sunyani, how did they fit into our national healthcare plan or agenda? After our 3-4 year stints as a Carnegie Fellow and other fellowships at Sunyani and at UNAIR, we painfully observed that there's a bifurcation of planning, execution, and funding of public institutions not accepting medical facilities. Here's what we think. Here's what we think and suggest. Instead of letting Agenda 111 sit abandoned and taken over by snakes, brushes, grass, and scorpions, can we either complete this hospital or, if possible, convert it, give it to UNAIR to use it for its newly proposed medical school? It has, the Agenda 111 hospital has bungalows that nurses, doctors, and other medical personnel could use. Instead of letting such public funds sunk into these institutions go to complete utter waste, we strongly suggest that we rethink how best to use this Agenda 111 hospital. We regretfully and sadly admit to an unfortunate development playing out in Ghana now. Besides the common refrain that we're a poor country and we can't afford to do certain things, we also hear responses including whether it is a classroom block, complex, or hospital or medical facility like the Koforidua Teaching Hospital, which has been abandoned for a while, close to a year or two. Institutions are not able to use even their own internally generated funds to finish or complete abandoned projects. Almost all the time, the answer is on, oh, this is a GTEC or Ghana Tertiary Education Fund or GMPC or Ghana Gas project. So, oh, we can't touch them. We have to let them sit idle and rot and keep on wasting public funds sunk into them. Also, why on earth should the Asante Hene's efforts to refurbish Komfanoshi Teaching Hospital be negatively sanctioned by imposing duties on imported equipment, building materials that the Otumfuo seeks to use to make Komfanoshi Hospital better for people in that region of Ghana? Apologies, ladies and gentlemen, but it's absurd to pay duties on items being donated to improve the lives of the Ghanaian public. Only in Ghana can this be tolerated. Why do we have to assess or levy taxes, import duties on equipment meant for a public institution funded by the state? Now to the final part of our keynote, problem-solving centeredness. What can we do? First, we need to bear in mind some realistic challenges, like defining clearly the role of the state and holding public leaders, politicians, especially MPP, NDC politicians, accountable by us. We, the elite, that's our job. We often ask our we often ask our medical doctor colleagues, physical natural scientists, how do you do or feel when you lose patients like the Panford teaching young emergency room doctor and others? By the way, we are emphasizing the case of the Panford teaching hospital emergency room doctor because the good book tells us how you treat the least amongst us. It's very important, and societies can be based on this. If an elite medical emergency room doctor can die because of the absence of a procedure to open his heart and let the blood flow and let him survive, then what happens to the poor old lady that we alluded to in our presentation? How do you function when you lack technology, facilities, and drugs to cure or treat your patients? Please, at this point, let me reiterate the fact that a physician that we consulted in the eastern region of Ghana had to go back to the back of his desktop computer to hold up the cord for him to get internet connection. This reminds me of a situation where I wouldn't want to mention a particular university where a colleague was teaching petroleum engineering in a room without electricity and without internet. So emphasis, we lack the technology, facilities, the drugs, and other consumables to cure our patients and ourselves. And I'd like to emphasize, include you, the doctors in this audience. We believe the answers or solutions may be created. And here we are being careful by our choice of words. We are talking about creativity, leadership, not passive, leave things to chance, leave things to God, leave things to Allah or fate. Here too, we wish to make a pertinent observation. It's only in Ghana where development officers or personnel take funds and tell donors what to do with their donations. Elsewhere in the world, development officials, fundraisers who operate in medical and educational institutions go out, they cultivate, entice donors, and when donors go to them, they are responsive. In Ghana, at best, they are lethargic or unresponsive. We repeat, elsewhere, leadership of educational and medical institutions are doers. They are can-do people with a positive predisposition toward aiding and getting wealthy donors and the public to donate in cash and in kind to support healthcare, educational systems, and training systems. We recall Dr. Kweku Nunu Gate, an eye specialist, talking about how, in spite of the fact that Harvard University and University of Toronto are far more wealthier than the University of Ghana, Harvard and University of Toronto always contacted him for fundraising. Contrast that with a situation where after he wrote checks for Legon, he only heard back when his check was deposited and the amounts taken from his account. No thank you note, no acknowledgement for his sacrifice and his contributions. Yes, our governments, state, political parties, public officials may waste or abuse the public coffers, but still some of us can and will make a difference. What did we learn from being engaged in being engaged with the Sunyani Teaching Hospital and the newly proposed, not yet functional, not yet accredited, UNAIR Medical School. With internally generated funds initiated by the VC and Professor JC, we are now left with a mere 700,000 to 1 million cedis to purchase lab equipment to get the medical school running. So our suggestion is, can we say we identify 100 to 1,000 potential donors for each to contribute 1,000 to 5,000 cedis, which are affordable and modest contributions and thus are within the reach of middle-class Ghanaians. On that note, we commend our health colleagues at Sunyani for making the CEO of Uzbek Hotel, Mr. Sam Bennett, the chair of the governing board of this newly created Sunyani Teaching Hospital Board. And by this extension, we also expect Mr. Sam Bennett to play some critical roles in getting the UNAIR proposed medical school off to a good start. These are good, hopeful signs, positive signs. We also advocate genuine public-private partnership, not the nominal type, lip service type. For example, with respect to Komfanochi Teaching Hospital, let this be the last time Ghana set a bad precedent where public giving is not encouraged. We should ensure that by all legitimate practical means, philanthropy is encouraged to fund health training, to fund the skills that are needed to be acquired by our doctors to make them highly competitive within an increasingly fast-paced, technologically evolving field of medicine. From our personal professional standpoints, we urge a replication through modification and adaptation of Carnegie Endowment's social science public policy collaboration between Africans in the diaspora and their Ghanaian counterparts. We propose our own kind of Carnegie diaspora collaboration between our own Ghanaian doctors, nurses, other medical personnel, and their counterparts in the diaspora. For this to work, two conditions must prevail. The diasporan experts who come to Ghana should be highly sensitive to the fact that Ghana is a third world country with third world medical conditions, especially with respect to advancements in technology and facilities for the practice of medicine. Equally important, and we stress this point, Ghanaian hosts or counterparts should not see diasporan talent as competition, but as critical missing links to effective, human-centered, affordable, and resilient healthcare. May we crave the indulgence of our audiences by reiterating that we have lots of diasporan doctors, non-African doctors, medical personnel, who, because of Ghana's prior record of achievements, are willing to contribute their skills, training, cash, and in-kind support to make the Ghanaian system better in collaboration with Ghanaians. Of course, Ghanaians must lead in this effort. Examples include our own personal health care physician and the former head of Beth Israel Hospital, saying to us, Kwamina, we heard you want to help your country. We are willing, able, and capable of contributing our share to making Ghana's healthcare system better. The question is, where is our overarching national healthcare plan or system into which we can fit these precious resources? Not to overtake, not to hijack, but to supplement our current crisis-ridden medical care. Recently, we had very cold reception from one prominent Ghanaian institution in our efforts to bring a young Ghanaian doctor back home. These are some of the few instances in which we Ghanaian professionals have not advanced the progress of not only our healthcare, but also vital aspects of our lives in Ghana as Ghanaians. Finally, one more social observation. We should not be interested in the nominal cedis allocated to healthcare in the annual budget of the nation, but also ask, qui bono, who benefits from such expenditures? And equally important, ask a key question, are we getting value for money? And does our healthcare system befit a nation that, based on our calculations, is reeling in 10, maybe close to $20 billion per annum in terms of foreign exchange? The question is, how are we using these resources for the benefit of our people by ensuring a resilient, inclusive, and human-centered healthcare system for all Ghanaians? We've appended to this presentation some videos that depict the state of two medical facilities in the Sunyani municipality that were recorded recently as part of this presentation. We refer to the UNAIR-based, newly constructed, under construction, abandoned hospital and the abandoned Agenda 111 hospital within the Sunyani municipality. Thank you for listening to us and thank you for watching this video.